Has Doctor Who gone woke? I've seen so many comments on the internet over the last couple of days that Doctor Who has gone entirely woke, and they're pushing the agenda, and they're pushing messages of trans and disabled rights when all we want is a science fiction show, and that the show is going to ruin itself, essentially. A video I want to talk about really briefly is Critical Drinker made a video called Why Doctor Who Will Continue to Fail, in which he was incredibly wrong and missed the entire point of the Children in Need special by incorrectly concluding that by showing Davros as a fully abled Khaled, that they had retconned the character and made him so he is no longer in a wheelchair. This is not true. In the special, we saw Davros as a fully abled human, a Khaled, which is the precursor to the Daleks, in case you didn't get that from the special, or in case you haven't seen Genesis of the Daleks. We saw Davros as a fully abled person, and the only message that was trying to convey was to show people that Davros was always going to be the creator of the Daleks, a crazy, maniacal, evil person, and his disability that happened after the genesis of the Daleks was not the cause. And that is all the message is trying to convey. It is not retconning the fact that Davros in a wheelchair being evil means that all disabled people are evil. All it's doing is showing that he was not always disabled and he was always destined to be this character. Something that Critical Drinker completely missed the point on, and has now said that the BBC is retconning and changing Davros as a character, which is completely untrue because it was a prequel. But I digress. Let's talk about the elephant in the room here a little bit and talk about some of the language that was used within the special, and that is the language centered around the trans community. One message in particular, or one line of dialogue that has really irked people for some reason, is the fact that when Donna and Rose gave up their Time Lord side from the Meta Crisis, they said this is something that a male presenting Time Lord could not understand. And people have gotten really, really annoyed by this. Something you always have to remember with science fiction and Doctor Who and just science fiction in general is there's always going to be some sort of social commentary. It's always going to reflect something that's going on in the world right now. And at the moment, there is a lot of discussion about trans people, the LGBT community, and how you are supposed to address these people and the correct language that you're supposed to use in order to make them feel included. Now, the Doctor, being David Tennant again, is a male presenting Time Lord. He is presenting as a male. Now, gender fluidity is something that we all know the Time Lords have. They can transition between being a male Time Lord 1 minute to going to be a female Time Lord the next. This is, in essence, a social commentary on transgenderism anyway. The fact that the Time Lords can switch genders and showing that gender is a fluid thing. But I think what people have an issue with is being told how to address people, how to think, and how to navigate this new paradigm in our society. Because it is new and it is confusing for a lot of people, myself included. I'm not a trans person. I am not someone in this community, but I do try to be inclusive and I do try to use the appropriate language. And ultimately the reason that I try to be inclusive and try to use the correct language, and the reason ultimately I believe Doctor Who and all science fiction is using the correct language, which to the uninformed looks like they're pushing an agenda, is just because if someone identifies as a female but was born as a male and they want to be called a female, that doesn't affect you in any way. The only thing that is affected for you is the language that you have to use. Instead of calling them he, you have to call them she, which is such a minor thing, but to that person it can mean the world because you are seeing them how they see themselves and accepting them for who they are. The very fact that they cast Yasmin Finney, a transgender actress, in the role of Rose was amazing. And when it first came about that they had cast her as Rose, people assumed that she was going to be playing Rose Tyler just because her name was Rose, which was stupid. It was a stupid thing for people to think, but people got up in arms about that as well. There is going to be specific language used with these characters that you may not be familiar with or that may seem strange to you. But what you have to remember is these parts of the stories are not designed for you. The people who are not part of the trans community, people who are not part of the LGBT community, people who are not disabled, these things are not designed for you. You can just ignore these because these things are designed to include the people who identify with these communities, and it's just a way to include them and let them know that you can enjoy this show because we accept you for who you are. That is the only message that is being pushed. There is no message of we need to make sure every person who we hire is going to be black, gay, trans, etc. The only message is inclusivity. The only message is we accept you. And that's a message we all need to take on board. Doctor Who has always been quote-unquote woke, as I said at the beginning of the video. It's always been inclusive. It's a show about aliens, for crying out loud. Different cultures, different planets, people who look completely different than what we do, people who are going to be oppressed by people. And the Doctor has always been the character that has stood up for the oppressed. And science fiction very often mirrors society and highlights the issues that are going on at the time. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you're not part of the transgender community, if you're not part of the LGBT community, if you're not a disabled person and you see language being used or hear language being used, just remember it's not designed for you. It's not designed to make you feel uncomfortable. All it's there to do is to make these people in these communities feel accepted and to feel like that they can enjoy the show and that they have representation. So they can watch the show and grow up thinking, maybe I can be a companion. They can have dreams of the Doctor washing them away and taking them to fantastical places and meeting fantastical aliens across the universe. Because that's all it's going to do. It's going to make them feel included. It's going to make them feel like they're part of the show. The same way that we feel like we're part of the show when we watch it as people not part of these communities. I do hate to come across as preachy when I'd make videos like this, but I am passionate about this kind of stuff. I feel like there's a lot of negativity in the world, especially when it comes to the word woke. People think it's inherently a negative thing, and I don't think it's a negative thing at all. And that's all I'm trying to say. If you agree with me, fine. If you disagree with me, that's fine too. But all I want to say is just be tolerant of people, just be nice. And if there's language used in these shows that you don't necessarily identify with, then just ignore it and move on, because there's plenty of other lines of dialogue in that show that were designed for you to make you laugh or make you feel included or make you feel like you're part of the show. All this is doing the same thing for other people. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.